Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. Through thick and thin, across the decades, wars, and administrations, the U.S.-Israel relationship has endured and grown stronger. This is our starting point for today's discussion on the state of this partnership. This alliance is now facing many challenges and complexities in the Mideast region, from the Gaza Strip to Lebanon and all the way to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Joining us to dissect these matters are Ambassador Danny Ayalon, who is a co-panelist at TV7's Mideast Review, formerly served, of course, as Israel's ambassador to the United States, and also a deputy foreign minister. It's always a pleasure to have you, Danny.
My pleasure, Jonathan.
The pleasure is all ours. Also joining us is Dr. Dan Diker, who is right now the president of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. It's also a pleasure to have you with us, Dan.
Great pleasure. Thank you, Jonathan.
And with me here in the studio, our TV7 editor-at-large, of course, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, set the stage for us.
So, Jonathan, on the presumption that one or two of your fields of interest would be astronomy, cosmology, the relationship between Israel and the United States is quite like the Earth to the Sun. Israel being the Earth, but the Sun has many more planets and galaxies to take care of, while Israel must, above all, make sure that the Earth is still benevolent towards it, climate change notwithstanding. So this is being said because here we are at the end of President Trump's first month in office, and already we have seen that the Trump administration, through the president himself, Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff, National Security Advisor Waltz, and others, they are all taking a keen interest in Israel, in its concerns. They are going out of the way to help Israel with its military, diplomatic needs. But nevertheless, they have other interests, such as Ukraine. And so we have seen that Envoy Witkoff, fresh from what he has done in the Israeli-Hamas negotiations, and will probably come back to do it, has been to Saudi Arabia along with Rubio and Waltz, because the priority for the administration is the Ukraine peace talks. So this is all being said because regardless of the importance that the Trump administration does ascribe to the Israeli-Arab conflict, and right now to the Gaza war, the Lebanon ceasefire, and so on and so forth, it will all be subject to the other interests and pursuits of the administration.
Absolutely. Well, Ambassador Ayalon, I'd like to ask you to give your 2 cents of things. No concrete question. How do you view the U.S.-Israel alliance?
It's good that you said 2 cents, because very soon the 1 cent coin will no longer be minted per the president's instructions.
This is right. Which Amir will save the American Treasury $43 million. In any case, certainly Trump in his second term is a known quantity, much more than was before. I would say that there is a marked difference between the first. When it comes to Israel-US relationship, I would say that his first term, was a great friend of Israel, but his gestures were mainly political, deep political moves, but mostly symbolic, whether it is to move the American embassy to Jerusalem, recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, recognize sovereignty of Israel over the Golan Heights, of course, moving out of the bad Iran deal from 2015 that was signed by Obama. And now we see that basically his attitude is much more concrete, as you wanted concrete answers. We see that when it comes to the strategic relations, when it comes to defense relations, then there is no pullback, that everything that Israel needs, which is available to the American military industrial complex, is really available for Israel. He takes the stand of Israel squarely in our corner vis-a-vis Hamas, vis-a-vis Iran, although he prefers a diplomatic settlement with Iran. But the threat is quite clear, and in any case, we see everything on the same page. The question will be, of course, whether this no daylight which exists today between the United States and Israel will really make a positive influence right here in the region. So far, if I may, I think that Trump's unique negotiation tactics, where he really sets a very high bar and lets the opposition or the other side hanging on the horns of the dilemma, has pretty much worked for him. And not just in our region, but also with Venezuela, with Colombia, even with Mexico, and I believe Canada as well. Here, I believe that, given the last 3 weeks, had it not been Trump's threat on Hamas, that Israel could do whatever it needs to do, I'm not sure we would have seen the hostages coming back according to the first phase. I believe also this will expedite the return of the hostages, as we will see, hopefully very soon, 6 more live hostages coming back. So I would say so far, I would give the Trump administration very high marks. And if that just the harbinger to what's going on what will go in the next 4 years, I think we may be up for very good surprises.
Dr. Diker, your take on this?
Jonathan, I think that President Trump has already proven himself in the first fewer than 30 days of his second administration as being the great disruptor of what has been Middle East stagnation for so many decades. And I'd like to add to what Ambassador Ayalon said, in that President Trump has hit the ground moving. He's a far more policy-oriented, mature president than he was in the first administration, and he has a dream team around him that is highly experienced, highly morally clear, and very aligned with Israel. I think that's a very, very important point for the region, is that Israel today, the United States administration today, are seen as the strong horses in the Middle East. One important element of that is we see that twice the number of hostages are already being returned this coming week, which in my assessment is a result of the Egyptians putting their front foot forward, and a lot of this at the behest of the Trump vision, which has really shaken everything to its foundation in the Middle East and has put the entire region on notice, particularly America's Arab partners, that if you want to see a stable Middle East, you better step up and offer some solutions, and as opposed to blaming Israel for everything that, in your view, the Arab world has gone wrong over the last 76 to 80 years. So I think that I agree with Ambassador Ayalon that we should look forward to some very positive developments. Thus far, there has been, I'd say, an unprecedented realignment between Washington and Jerusalem, which only bears well for security, stability, and possible prosperity for the Middle East region as a whole.
Mr. Oren, among the long list of positions that you held over the years, you also worked at the Israeli embassy in Washington at some point. And I'd like to ask you, since for years upon years, Israel has been viewed as the so-called highway to Washington. This was from the prism of various countries here in the region. Is that still the case? And to what degree is the Israeli calculus merely one factor within the broader American calculus when we're talking about regional actors?
So lest we forget, under President Biden, more hostages were released then President Trump would be able to get home, among other factors, because less were still in captivity after the first deal of November 2023. Now, obviously, several high-ranking Israelis and also semi-Israelis or hyphenated Israelis, such as Miriam Edelson, who was born in Israel but is an American now, they have access, they have entree into Trump's confidence. And they can get things done if they align with Trump's general view of the world. The problem is, whatever Trump has been doing, and as Dan said, the great disruptor, there is now one major center of power in Washington. Basically, all three branches are under Trump. Even the judicial branch, where he managed to appoint three justices of the Supreme Court the last time around. And that means that Israel cannot play one side of the aisle against the other, Congress against the executive branch, or within Congress. When Danny Ayalon was the ambassador to Washington, there was still this tradition that Israel had this mythical power. It didn't even have to be substantial. This was the image that Israel could get things done or undone. But now, if Trump changes his mind and lashes out at Israel, it wouldn't have any recourse.
Well, perception is vital, obviously. With regard to President Biden versus President Trump, I mean, naturally, the time allotted to Biden over Trump, as you mentioned, there's a factor there. But again, October 7th occurred under the watch of Biden, which was unfortunately detrimental not only to the situation here in Israel, but the entire region. And we're still in a very grave situation. Now, President Trump, during a very lengthy period of his election campaign, Ambassador Ayalon promised to end the endless wars. And we are talking here about, of course, a very significant conflict here in the region. There is pushback to his method and his out-of-the-box thinking. How can Israel work with the American administration right now to somehow bring or converge certain realities into the planning and execution of those plans in the long term?
Well, I think it is very important to mention again, no daylight at this point. I don't think there will be any in the future either. Of course, Amir is very right that today there is no maneuverability for anyone in a political way to drive a wedge between different branches, the Congress and the administration. But I don't think we will need to do that. And we see that even the very fact of the election of Trump back in November last year made a difference. It made a difference quite, I would say, rapidly. We have to remember that it was in December, after he was elected, that the ceasefire in Lebanon was achieved. We have to remember also that Israel wanted to extend its stay, its presence, military presence in South Lebanon, and with the American support, we did manage to do that. Even now, we still have in very high 5 strategic locations still Israeli presence in South Lebanon. I don't think this could have been done without, let's say, a quote unquote a Superman in Washington holding a big club. I mean, he's speaking loudly and holding a big cloud. The fact is that the Arab leaders are scrambling to try and offer solutions in Gaza. It's also a fresh breath of air because before that, they were leaving it all to the United States, to Israel to find solutions. They were waiting for other parties to carry the heavy weight. I don't think this is the case because as the major Arab countries, mostly like Egypt and Jordan, are very much dependent on American support, as well as Gulf countries, which are dependent on American political support and also thwarting the Iranian threat. I think we will see that they will be much more forthcoming than before. And again, I don't think that there will be much leaning over Israel as far as I can see.
Dr. Diker?
Jonathan, it was Teddy Roosevelt, 26th president of the United States, who said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." But Danny just pointed out, Ambassador Ayalon just pointed out something very interesting that I don't think we thought about before, that Trump is saying, "I'm speaking loudly and carrying a big stick." And that's a real upgrade in presidential power. And I think it has shaken the entire region down to its core. There is a very important moment that took place probably, I think, about 36 hours ago, when Secretary of State Rubio said, in his joint press conference with Prime Minister Netanyahu, he said, "I think it was the clearest expression that I've heard in my lifetime by a Secretary of State who said, what's happening around the Middle East, whether it is Hamas in Gaza, whether it is Hezbollah in Lebanon, whether it is what developments taking place in Syria, the Houthis in Yemen, the Iranian loyalists in Iraq, everything can be traced back to one address, and that is the Islamic Republic of Iran, the IRGC in Tehran." That clear statement, I think, it really is a very, very important expression of the tightest no daylight alliance between the United States and Israel, and both of them pointing a very long finger at the Iranian regime. This is a very important development because we have not seen that type of total alignment on Iran, certainly on a declarative level, I think in many decades, if ever. And I think it's a very important weather vane to where both the administration and the Netanyahu coalition are looking clearly. And I'll end with this: it seems that Israel will let the president take the lead on a maximum pressure campaign. President Trump is an economic warrior. He brought the Iranian regime to its knees, bankrupting it, breaking the bank back in his first term. And it's my sense that we will see that in the coming weeks and let's say 6 months, whether that will become a reality and can create a fundamental shift in Iran's behavior. If not, it would be my assessment that only military force will be able to effect regime change and eliminate this existential threat of the Iranian nuclear weapons program.
So, some point that I do want to highlight, though, there is some daylight between the Trump administration and Israel when we're talking about regime change, particularly since President Trump, American foreign policy since the Iraq War comes from the prism of we don't want to deal with the causality of what may occur afterwards and start replanning and rebuilding all kind of different elements. We'll have to wait and see what that actually means for today. But when it comes to one point of clarity, and that is the Americans realize, and that is something that Israel also understands, that this is an international camp against the United States. It's an international camp against Western civilization at large, and also Israel and the United States within that context. But we're talking, of course, about the axis, be it Russia, China, the Islamic Republic of Iran, North Korea, the various actors standing with Western civilizations under U.S. leadership, namely Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The acting from this prism is now becoming more and more apparent, and also dealing with an international fora that has been exploited by bad actors for their anti-Western agenda. And that is also, once again, we're going to see a lot of activity in the United Nations and other fora to contend with those. President Trump already signed the executive orders with regard to the ICJ or ICC, to be more exact. But Mr. Oren, we don't have very much time left, and I'd like to get a certain perspective here. President Trump is keen on negotiating. He's a negotiator, and that is clear. His methods, his literature that he wrote over the years, or people wrote for him, shadow writers and such, have all directed it to the point where he wants to make deals. But there are consequences to not making a deal with him. How do you see this in Middle Eastern context?
It's probably my impaired vision as against Dan Diker's 2020 vision, when he doesn't see any daylight, or you see this alignment. I think there is a difference, because Netanyahu would like to destroy the Iranian nuclear infrastructure kinetically, to get rid of it, not on a piece of paper, but with fire and brimstone. Now, as you said, Jonathan, President Trump is result-oriented. He wants to see a deal which can be verified and supervised, and not have the other side deceive the West, the innocents abroad, and then go around them and proceed to have nuclear weapons. And therefore, if you look at it from the White House, the axis can be split. He wants to negotiate with Iran on one issue or two, the malign activities too, but with China and Russia on nuclear arsenals. This is, for him, the main topic. He wants to slash the nuclear arsenals of all three major powers by 50%. It's very ambitious, probably can't be done, but he wants to talk about it. And of course, there are the other issues, Ukraine, Taiwan, that you mentioned. So Israel is not in that league. Israel has its problems in its front yard, its backyard, and it needs and wants American help. But Israel cannot play in the major league.
Well, it's playing in the major leagues. We might agree to disagree on this one.
In the regional league.
In the regional league, it is a significant actor. And once again, it is a significant part, since everything is interconnected within the major leagues. America needs Israel in order to deal with the entire map. Each one of you has 1.5 minutes. Ambassador Ayalon, we'll start with you.
Okay, so if we make the assumption that Iran is the major problem, from Iran, if Iran's problem is solved or the threat is eliminated, everything can fall in place. It is true that Trump would prefer a political solution over a military one, but we see these days roaming in the Middle East or flying over the Middle East territory, American B-52. So there is a great signal to the Iranians that they should come to the negotiation table and actually take a deal or else. In any case, if we look at the bigger picture, I think that we see a totally different approach, a much softer approach of Washington under Trump to the Russia-Ukraine than in the Middle East. In the Middle East, he is totally behind Israel. In the case of Ukraine, I believe that he also has a bigger picture here, or a bigger plan, where he will sacrifice, I have no other word, but sacrifice Ukraine for saving Taiwan, and also maybe for bringing Russia into the American camp against China, not only in the case of Taiwan, but also in the case of Iran.
Mr. Ayalon is, of course, speaking about two B-52s and another number of air fuelers or tankers who flew over the region just a couple of days ago. And that has quite the significant messaging, of course, to the Iranians, who to this very moment are not keen on negotiations and are saying so publicly, at least, we'll have to wait and see. Dr. Diker, how about finishing on a optimistic line? The Abraham Accords was last time. Can we expect something of sorts this time around?
Jonathan, great question. And it brings us back to August 2024, Prime Minister Netanyahu in front of both houses of Congress proposing the Abraham Security Alliance that goes beyond the original Abraham Accords, which ended up being a fair sort of business arrangement between Israel and the Gulf under Saudi blessing and sanction. Right now, I can tell you that that we at the JCFA ourselves have met with a number of Arab countries with which Israel does not have diplomatic relations, and there are others that are known to governments and Jerusalem that are really reaching out to Israel today in a way that we haven't seen before. They see Israel as, Jonathan, one of your many tongues, that al-Faris al-Asil, the strong horse, the gallant thoroughbred, so prominent in Arab Islamic history, as brought up by Ibn Khaldun, the Arab political philosopher more than 700 years ago. This is a very, very important development for Israel. And of course, the United States seen just as certainly the world's major superpower that puts its money where it appears to put its money where its mouth is. In short, there is a grand design, I believe. As we speak now, the United States co-hosting in Riyadh, Russia, which is sort of a very, very unusual development. And therefore, I think we will see a new strategic architecture for the Middle East under President Trump. And I think finally, the Gaza development, in which President Trump said that the Gaza Strip should be emptied of its residents and then resettled as a major international site, is really a message that the traditional Palestinian issue no longer in line with the original Abraham Accord.
With that, Ambassador Ayalon, Dr. Diker, Mr. Oren, thank you so very much for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition, from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.